what do you get when you cross a know-it-all newspaper columnist with an awkward, unsophisticated everyman?
Yeah. Well, I'm just not sure about that right now.
Welcome to Couch and the Room.
Welcome to Couch in the Rue, presented by Skyman Premium Cannabis, inspiring people to look better, feel better, love better, just be better, feel better every damn day of their lives. And our Wednesday night show, also our end of week show this week, brought to you by our friends at Firekeepers Casino and the Firekeepers iCasino and Sportsbook. Download the Firekeepers iCasino and Sportsbook app today. College football is approaching. Football is approaching. If you want to bet the games with us or on your own, download the Firekeepers iCasino and Sportsbook app today. You'll love their sign-up promotions. You'll love the user-friendly nature of the app. Or just swing on down to Dacey Sportsbook in Battle Creek. Great place at Firekeepers Casino, right off I-94. Jason, how you doing, man?
What's up, buddy? Man, this is like old school. We had to be on time and start the show at this time. We have guests on. Like professionals.
That's kind of weird. It's like a wind-up into what's coming.
Yeah.
The year for us. Yeah, get back.
One last show like this, I promise we'll be back to normal soon here.
Yeah.
Next week for football. Because football is back. There's games Saturday, and I can't wait to finally talk to Harry about it, too.
Yeah, usually we begin our end-of-week show with what we're betting this weekend, presented by the Firekeepers iCasino and Sportsbook, but we're going to do that when we talk to Harry here in a little bit. So the run of today's show, we're going to have Nicole Auerbach from The Athletic on very shortly. She's been out front on the Big Ten expansion story. She's also a Big Ten Network analyst. And we'll talk to her about where things are going next in the Big Ten, what it means for schools like Michigan State, and then also a little bit about Big Ten football and all that. And then right after that, we'll talk to Harry, and we'll pick the college football games for this weekend. We'll talk about some NFL over-under stuff that he's really high on, and then we'll do your Twitter questions. And I know I limited it to one apiece, but some really good ones, and so I think that'll be a fun bit for.
So can we talk about what happened yesterday? I don't know where you were. Where I was on the golf course when I heard around the world what was going on with Chad Latz. Now we play his songs and stuff, and I know there was some controversy on Twitter with Michigan State. I was getting texts from guys I work with that are Michigan State guys that listen to the show, and they're like, dude, what's going on? I didn't know Michigan State Twitter was going to flip upside down over Chad Latz. So do we still play his stuff? I mean, he didn't. I talked him off the ledge a little bit, but Chad, what's going on here, my friend?
Yeah, it was. I didn't see what led to everything.
By the way, he took a leave of absence for Twitter and broke your record of 5 hours, and it was back within 35 minutes. I know.
Stop.
So we might have to go back to off for a little bit, and we have to reconvene and see what we're doing here, Chad. I mean, I love you, Chad. Don't get me wrong. I have a shirt, hot last summer, all that, but
I'll say this:
stop at the pics.
David Hasselhoff has never threatened dick pics on Twitter before, as far as I know.
You don't know that.
I don't.
Have you seen the video of him on the floor eating a hamburger, shit-faced? I mean, we've all been there. Listen, we're not perfect. We're not ripping on someone for making a mistake. He did stop after I was like, Chad, seriously, let's stop this. Let's take a step back and think about it, my friend.
Well, I think one of the Twitter questions this week is about social media decisions that you and I regret.
Ooh.
And so, it's a really good question. And so we'll get into that.
Hey, listen, Graham asked Trees to take my phone away when we'll get into it, but I mean, listen, we've all been there. I can't throw stones at anybody. I want Chad to have the best life, be a Michigan State fan, and people enjoy him doing cameo videos or whatever the hell he does on Twitter. Just have fun. Let's just have fun. Let's be a part of the show and not show your dong. It's all I mean, seriously, the rules are pretty simple on this show. Don't show your mule on Twitter. We'll interact, right?
It's
I mean, for the Couch of the Room show to have a rule, period, is kind of wild. But the fact is, just don't show your rod. That's all we ask. Come as you are, so to speak, but no mule pics.
Seems fair.
All right. I just had to get that out of the way.
No, I think that's.
Because we do play a song. I love Chad's songs.
Yeah.
They make me happy, but we're going to take a step back. September 2nd, baby. We'll be back.
So what's happened since we last convened? Michigan State recruit pledge, de-pledged.
Hamp Fay playing safety.
Hamp Fay playing safety.
I mean, should we panic here, Graham? I mean, I don't know. I hear that stuff, and I'm sitting there, do I overreact? I'm just saying.
Why would you panic about Hamp Fay playing safety?
It's just kind of weird. He's a 6'5" quarterback from Texas.
They're looking for us. It's very clear that Caden Hauser has surpassed him. So you got a kid who's younger than you, surpassing you, and where are you going to go? And the
I'm
question
talking about a
is,
6'5" white kid named Hamp playing safety is just a little surprising.
yeah, he was a hurdler in high school. He's a good athlete. Whether he sticks around Michigan State after this year, we'll
I'm not
see.
saying he's not a good athlete, but when you're trying to find a guy like that at a position, it's just kind of interesting. And a transfer kicker from Auburn a week and a half before. I mean,
That's the bigger deal. I think not knowing what you have at kicker and being a little nervous there and bringing in a kicker as a graduate transfer with 3 years of eligibility left, which can only happen in the COVID era. Those are all.
it's going to be fun.
Those are things we'll get into. And also Mel Tucker sort of confirming everything I've ever said about commitment is a word, and commitments is with college football recruits, and we'll get into that a little bit in the Twitter questions. Why don't you give Nicole a call here, and we'll get into that interview. While he is calling Nicole, a reminder: if you've never been to a Skyman, I cannot tell you enough. It is a place you will be comfortable. Like if this is your maiden voyage into cannabis, like it was pretty, I don't say entirely for me, but certainly going into dispensaries, you will feel comfortable. You'll have your questions answered. A lot of good stuff there. And if it's your first time, you can use the Couch and Rube promo code CouchandRube20 for 20% off at any Skyman store. Go to Skyman.com for location information and specials. Throughout the state of Michigan, there are 3 in the greater Lansing area. Chances are you live within half an hour tops of a Skyman location. Also this weekend, looking for something to do, brunch at Midtown Brewing Company. Go to midtownbrewingcompany.net or just stop on by 402 South Washington Avenue in downtown Lansing. Very pleased now to have the Athletics' Nicole Auerbach and Big Ten analyst Nicole Auerbach on with us. Nicole, thanks for taking a few minutes. I know you are doing about 4,000 jobs now.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me. Happy to come on.
Well, so, okay, the Big Ten is the story that you have been out in front on for quite some time. So let's just start with that. What in your mind is likely to be next, and where do you think this all ends?
Well, they're connected but different because I think that, I'm not sure anyone thinks the Big Ten or the SEC will stay at 16 teams forever. But I also think it's very much a question of, where and when and what is the timeline next. Because I think, if Notre Dame had been interested in joining the Big Ten now, that's an immediate yes, right? Then you accelerate everything, and that is the easiest possible addition. And, that's the Big Ten now coast to coast and has USC and has all these appealing things. But if Notre Dame thinks they can stay independent and they believe that they'll have the financial support that they need to do that, and, I asked Jack Swarbrick that just last week. I said, do you guys think that you'll be able to do that? And he said, we hope so. So, independence is really important to them. If they stay independent, then if you're the Big Ten, I think you, again, still have to make a decision of if now is the right time to continue to grow. But the options are a little bit more limited. I mean, you're looking at, do you want to do a Western wing and a division of sorts? Do you want to go 2 or 4 more on the West Coast? You'd have to make the money work because, again, if this stuff was so obvious, it would have already happened. So, is that a late-night TV window package for Saturday night? Is that going to bring in enough money? Are there other revenue streams that would offset the cost because you would be splitting revenue extra ways now? And so, there's no way that the Big Ten's not going to be able to go to its athletic directors and presidents and say, actually, you know what, we're going to add schools because, we want to get bigger, but you guys are now going to essentially take a pay cut. Like, that's not going to happen. So, you have to crunch the numbers and evaluate that. We also have to see, I think, whatever the next inflection point on that side of things is probably when, the Pac-12 has some sort of contractual agreement or media rights deal to take to its schools and trying to lock people in and tether each other to each other. And, what is the length of that deal? What are the terms of that contract? Is that if it's 5 years, do the Big Ten presidents just say, well, let's wait and see what the landscape looks like a couple years from now? So you still have some questions on that side, but you also know, I mean, Kevin Warren has not been shy about his interest in expansion, keeping that door wide open. And he did say, in an interview with HBO Real Sports that he could see conferences going to 20 teams. And so, again, maybe you have a push and pull. Maybe it's not a unanimous feeling within the Big Ten, but you have to, fully vet that and evaluate that and crunch the numbers. Or, will someone eventually challenge the ACC grant of rights? I mean, that hasn't happened yet. And that's a number of schools that are, quote, unavailable right now. But what if someone were to do that and see what it would take to get out of the ACC before 2036? That would change some things as well, and I think also put a little bit more of a time crunch or some pressure, because there would be schools in the ACC markets that, in the ACC footprint, that the SEC would also be interested in it. But, I think that there's just a lot of uncertainty right now, and I think these things are just really complicated. And, it's just, I want to remind listeners that even though it felt like USC and UCLA happened really quickly, it just broke very late. Like, it took months to get to that point. And I think that right now everyone's just so impatient waiting to see if the Big Ten is going to do something else that, we're kind of forgetting that there's a lot of steps that would have to take place and a lot of numbers crunched and valuations and all different things before you can decide yes or no. I mean, it's the same schools, that are on the list and that they have had data on for a long time, but you have to make the numbers work. And it took months for USC and UCLA to happen, and that even was accelerated over the final 6 to 8 weeks. So, this is something that, it wasn't going to happen overnight, and from all indications all along, it was always going to be the real serious exploration of this was always going to be after the media rights deal was signed, and obviously it's been, less than a week since then.
One of the things that I guess Kevin Warren seems to understand and willing to discuss, and you get to a certain price point where the idea that there isn't some sort of compensation for players that's a little more formalized seems almost a little absurd. I'm wondering how you think that might look, whether that's directly through television networks, whether it's some, NIL deal with, I don't know if the Big Ten could do that. I don't know, and I don't know how much Title IX is involved in terms of equaling, the number of scholarships going to football or men's basketball players. Like, do you think some sort of formalized compensation structure is pretty in short order around the corner?
I mean, it depends on how you define, around the corner. I think I keep coming back to the idea that the NCAA has really fought tooth and nail for any major changes that have happened to it, especially to the financials. So for NIL, I mean, there was so much time that they could have gotten out in front of it, could have been proactive in the space, would have been able to have rules around it, and they didn't until a court backed them into this, until their backs were against the wall. And not only the courts, but the justice system, the Justice Department had sent them a warning letter about antitrust behavior. And you had multiple Congress people coming at them. You had proposed bills in a number of different states from Republicans and Democrats in a very polarized time. Like, they were just so back into it that maybe, I mean, there are certainly people in college athletics that would love for, them to actually be proactive on this space and say that this is inevitable, so why not try to figure out how to do it. But there's also others who will say it's going to take, a court case. It's going to take a judge ruling for something like this to happen. You're not going to have people voluntarily give up so much money in order to do this just because, again, even if it is inevitable, they've fought tooth and nail until the very last second, until they've had to change in the past. And so, is that also the reality? So I tend to lean that way, that it would take the courts or Congress or something for that model to actually change. But I mean, there are a lot of people who really, think that this is where we're headed. So don't shy away from it. But there are a lot of questions. You mentioned Title IX. That's one of them. I think the questions of, are we talking revenue sharing? And to your point, who is doing that? Is that conferences? Is that the media partners themselves? Is it schools? And then I think you also have to throw in the question of, can you do that if they're not employees or employers? And then what if they are employees and employers? Is that, like, one of the court cases that's challenging the NCAA right now is about hourly wages and minimum wage scales. That's different than revenue sharing that we're talking about for, football, men's basketball, women's basketball, people driving a lot of that revenue. That's very different. And then, are you talking salaries? Like, all of this is very different. So it's really hard to tell exactly what it will look like because it's sort of like we don't know which domino is going to be the domino that falls that causes it. But I think that people on campuses are talking to lawyers a lot about all of this and really trying to prepare for a world where that might be the case. I think in terms of, the Big Ten, I think about it a lot with this, the Big Ten and the SEC and the money that they're pulling in is, if you're USC or UCLA and you're trying to figure out your future in college sports, you want to be somewhere that is dictating it for itself, that is charting its own course. And you want to be there somewhere there's stability, where there's where the financials are creating that and creating opportunities, creating stability. And I think, too, in the back of your mind, or maybe in the front of your mind, you're thinking if we get to a situation where schools or conferences are directly paying players, you want to have more money in that pot to then be able to spend it on the players. You don't want to be so cash-strapped or falling behind in other areas and then have to do that. So I think it all plays into everything together. I think people are certainly talking about it a lot. Like, even 5 years ago, 10 years ago, all of this would be very, very taboo. And I think the fact that you have, commissioners and you have athletic directors and have all these people openly talking about it certainly speaks to what a lot of people would say would be the inevitability of this dynamic, this financial model changing.
Nicole, I appreciate it. I know you got to fly here. You can read her work at The Athletic. I think many of you already have some fantastic stuff on how this all came together. And you can see her every week on the Big Ten Network. Nicole Auerbach from The Athletic. Appreciate you.
All right. Thanks, Graham. Thanks for having me.
All right. Here's the thing, Jason.
Yep.
I think this is going to happen quicker. I do think.
Doesn't it have to, though?
Yeah. I think a year from now, we're going to be down the pike on understanding what some sort of revenue sharing might look like. It just becomes too much money not to do it.
You just have to when money gets to an inflation, like a rate where you're like, okay, this is getting out of control.
Because my argument used to always be against paying players, that there were only about 23 athletic departments that made money. Yeah, you could say some coaches made a lot, maybe too much. But really, there wasn't enough money in most of college athletics, at least at the school level.
But you weren't against it if it made sense for everybody.
No, I was never against it.
Players got paid that it was making money.
But just 10 years ago, there just wasn't as much extra cash as was perceived. Because a few schools, Ohio State's making a lot of money. A few schools could have done it well.
But Eastern's they lose, what, $20 million?
But they're still screwed. That side of things, this is why it's going to be conference-driven. It'll be different. And this is why it might be through your media rights deal. That's where it makes the most sense. Is, the Big Ten has a certain media rights package. Their athletes will get a certain amount, and that'll be to their advantage. And it's going to change look, already you don't have an even playing field. But I just think we're absolutely.
But doesn't this make it harder though? It's not an even playing field, but when the rich get even richer, the Alabamas where it's like the things they were getting away with anyway, now they can really get away with stuff. It's almost impossible to, especially unless there's a 12-team playoff where you think that you have a shot. But you go into it only 4 teams every year, the halves are going to be there all the time.
That's a separate thing. That is going to change. I think pretty soon also we'll have an idea of direction. I think most of the posturing by the SEC commissioner saying, well, we offered you a pretty good deal on a 12-team playoff, and you balked, and I think most of the Big Ten saying maybe 16. I think they wind up at 12. I think everybody knows that's best for the game. Maybe it gets to 16, but they know it's going to expand. They know that deep down that makes the most sense for their conferences, for everybody. That's separate. I think the money component of it, though, will be interesting in a couple ways. How much money is split? How much is each football player getting? How is that distributed? Is Nicole brought up, is Title IX impacted? Can you do it around Title IX with some sort of NIL deal, technically, through the conference or something like that? How would that play? And how are athletes then treated if they're viewed as professionals? And what's that relationship with fans? I don't think fans like any of this stuff. Now they don't mind NIL is a concept, but I don't think they like a lot of
fans. Like I don't really care. I mean, if it's a free market and you can get money, you know, so be it. If you can market yourself and get yourself out there.
I don't think NIL, as it's meant to be, bothers people. I think the way it's being used in recruiting, I think the way the transfer portal, I think everything that's happening in college sports makes it less appetizing for people.
Sure.
And so
I'm more scared of it than I am disgusted by it, though. I'm just worried, like we've talked about, the shady characters on the sidelines who just want to be together with athletes can now do so when you have millions of dollars that you want to fund to these guys, and it's just going to be, if you don't have any rules, it's going to be crazy.
So let's spin this forward to Michigan State a little bit. So one of the things that I think is that's going to be fascinating to watch, and we saw it this week with one decommitment of a 4-star receiver from Tennessee, another 4 or 5-star level defensive end committing. There's movement within the in the recruiting lane for Michigan State. But then you have Mel Tucker basically saying, you know, put a pause on this for a second. It does not, the recruiting does not end when they commit. And he basically labeled the difference between, you know, I always say pledge instead of commit just because it softens it. He softened it even more. He said, they're super interested. And that's what you are. When these guys commit, they're just super interested. And that's what Rivals and 24/7 ought to call it. Super interested. So-and-so is super interested in Michigan State. Because until they sign, they don't commit. But Michigan State is now going to play in a world where this happens more often. And at a time in college athletics where I think the NIL money and the recruiting space is going to get fascinating. And I think it's going to play out interestingly this year. One of the things Mel Tucker has talked about is a lot of these NIL deals, the extent that the athlete thinks they're getting from these places where they're getting them in recruiting is bullshit. And those kids and their parents are going to start to figure it out what the truth is about them by the time before they get to signing day. And so they're going to be kids back on the market the school they first pledged to, they're going to have lost. They didn't maybe want to go there originally anyway. It was a good deal. Already the trust has been broken. They made a decision about money at an age where, God, if that's your driving decision, that sucks to have to do it that early. And I understand there are some kids where that really has to be the case. But as long as you can make your life not entirely about financial decisions, I mean, I've regretted, well, I don't want to be myself because I've made lots of bad financial decisions. But the ones I made for the money really early on were all mistakes. And I got out of some of them and didn't enjoy some of them.
But how much money are we talking about?
Not much.
Right.
Yeah,
You're putting yourself in
money,
a scenario of kids getting $100K. It's a little different than getting a $5,000.
Right, but some of that
or something.
Right. No doubt.
You know what I mean? Like when you come from nothing, or you come from a neighborhood where you had nothing, and someone hands you $100K, I can relate because I was handed $41,000 after a car accident. So I can kind of relate to know, like, wow, what do I do with this? I guess I talked to a financial advisor. You know, I wish Mark and Jay I knew of them when back then, because I probably would have done a little bit better with my money. But man, I can't imagine.
The duffel bag would have been their suggestion. Hey, Jeep duffel bag, put it in there.
Actually, guys, it's a bank bag. I had them count the money out in the back room.
I love that they took it in the back room.
No. They took me back there. I didn't even know what happened in a bank like that. I couldn't believe I was back there. A guy like me behind the bank.
So you know the other thing I love about this show, and I wanted to do one last thing with Nicole there, and I wish we had a little more time. She had something she had to fly to, but it's time to really shift football. Like, we have done the Big Ten, we have done expansion, and that ship will break, and it may break in the middle of the year, it may break in the offseason. We'll have plenty of time to talk about it. We'll have plenty of time to talk about recruits. But what I love about the next week and the September and October is game-centric. That's where people's heads are. Week to week. Now, if somebody in Michigan State loses to Akron, people will be like, fuck this. But largely, it is.
That would be good for the show.
It would not be good for the show. But largely it is game-centric, and we will adjust to that too. We will go to a Sunday night, Tuesday night, Thursday night format.
I guess.
And
I mean, I'd like to pat ourselves on the back here a little bit for getting through this July and August kind of thing by ducking, vacations, 2 week this, here and there. We apologize to the listeners, but man, we do a decent job of not having to do death shows.
It keeps you fresh. It just keeps you.
It's really nice. Listen, I know it's better. It's better for the listener if we don't do some of these, but
well, let's take a really quick break. When we come back, the great Harry Gagnon. We'll talk about the games, the college football games this week, and some NFL football over-unders. Couch on the Roof, presented by Skyman Premium Cannabis and Firekeepers iCasino and Sportsbook app.
Firekeepers Online Casino and Sportsbook is the site to play. Get your Vegas on right now from your phone, tablet, or laptop. All the hottest slots and tables, plus sports betting featuring in-game wagering. Download the app at firekeeperscasino.com. Go with the name you know. Firekeepers. Terms and conditions apply. Must be 21 or older and located in Michigan. Gambling problem? Call the Michigan Problem Gambling Help.
Yo, Harry, how you feeling, man?
7117.
Yeah, dude, I got the same sniffles. I hope I'm not coming down with this shit.
Where else can you cheer on your team? Enjoy a mouth-watering burger or savory sushi?
Terrible.
It's about handcrafted
Yeah, dude, I was
cocktails,
talking about Sal's
wonderful
thing when
beers
you guys
on
were on the
tap.
pod. He was talking
Take
about,
your
I think you were
game
talking about
day or
Ken.
date
and
night
he was
to
like,
Casket Company
some
Kitchen
dude
Bar
got
on Front 43
kicked out of the strip
near
club or
Frankfurt.
something.
Two
Like,
amazing
or something.
places with one awesome blended modern American Asian.
Dude, I know people tell me that, like, I'm like, I don't remember what I say on this
TVs,
fucking
or
show,
stop
but
in for the
all
all-you-can-eat
right, brother,
lunch
hang on a
buffet.
second.
Enjoy happy hour or elevate your night out at Casket Company or Front 43 on East Saginaw in Lansing. Wherever you are on your cannabis journey, let Skymint Premium Cannabis be your guide, your friend, and your place. Whether you're curious about cannabis or a seasoned connoisseur, Skymint's knowledgeable staff will help you with a vast selection of products to choose from to fit your needs. Skymint believes access to the best cannabis helps people do good and feel good, so they go out right here in Michigan, giving you high-quality, locally grown cannabis at highly accessible prices. Visit skymint.com for special offers and location information throughout Michigan, and use the promo code Couch and Roof 20 for 20% off your first visit. Skymint Cannabis, you'll love this place.
Find Couch and the Rude podcasts on Spreaker, iTunes, iHeartRadio, Spotify, YouTube, Facebook, Google Podcasts, CastBox, and the Rude's favorite podcast addict.
Couch on the Roof, presented by Skyman Premium Cannabis, and our Wednesday night show brought to you by our friends at Firekeepers iCasino and Sportsbook app. It is time now to pick the games, as we do every week with the great Harry Gagnon from Against All Odds, with Cousin Sal, Best Bet Corner, and ExtraPoints.com. Harry, how you doing, brother?
What's up, guys? How you guys doing?
Good.
Good, man. Not as, Harry's coming over COVID now, so.
Are you feeling all right?
Feel better, my friend.
Yeah, today's the first day I tested negative in like 9 days, so that's good.
Was this your first bout with COVID?
It was, and you guys know I'm all over the place. So I'm like, how do people get it? I mean, how am I not getting it? And then you know what? It was last weekend. I went out to Manhattan Beach. Sal had some business to do in New York, so I watched the kids for the weekend. Went to the airport, had a great weekend. It was Monday. I got to the LAX, and all of a sudden I just started feeling like crap, and that was that.
Well, yeah, I mean, when you make out with your bookie, too, that doesn't help, It's not...
Was there a possibility of you going to the J-Lo Ben Affleck wedding with Kimmel?
Jimmy was there. He was definitely there. I got to say, I'm a little... He made time to go to that, but when I invited him to my wedding, I didn't get a card.
Unbelievable. Maybe you need to have like 3 of them, and he'll come to one of them.
Right.
Those guys.
Right?
Yeah.
Boy.
No, I feel you. I was all worried about getting it before I went to England, and then in England was, 4 soccer games. I was in subway stations and packed subways and hotels and restaurants and theaters and like nothing, and you start...
You had a great time, too?
I did. You start to believe it's all a hoax, so no, I'm kidding.
Now, Grandma was...
I still have a buddy who tells me that, so I don't know.
Yeah.
But I tell him it was the real deal last week, I'll tell you that.
Grandma was listening to Against All Odds today, and they were talking about the Lions and Hard Knocks. Now, Harry, I just want to let you guys know, don't fall for this. I'm getting some of my mojo back, I'm getting some fandom back, but I don't want you guys losing money this year on the Lions.
Well, I know. That's something that Sal pointed out, that it seems like everybody loves this Lions team to go over. I mean, Hard Knocks, I'll tell you what, for beating the Lions, I've been entertained. And you got, with the Billie Jean song done by Hutchinson, I mean, that was great.
Yeah, it was great, but it's not going to win me any money. I'm just saying, I think Brother Bryce said, he's like, the coaching staff is fun and great, but our former players at every offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator position, is that going to work? I hope it does. Don't get me wrong. I'm just, as a gambler, I'm like, I don't know yet.
The coaching staff is great, but it's good to watch. But I mean, Stu Staley's a little bit too much to take, isn't he, to me?
No, I love it. Yeah, I love all this rah-rah. I mean, you have to understand, as a Lions fan, we've seen everything come in here, and this is different. I understand, and at 43 years old, I have trepidation with it, but it's fun, and it's a different vibe, and the players seem to enjoy it, and that's all that matters to me.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I mean, they seem they love him. I just think it's a little over the top, but still, listen, if Detroit can pull off a couple wins to start the season, it's all worth it, right?
I mean, they still have Jared Goff, a guy that threw on 4th and 3, threw it out of bounds twice last year. So there's still that.
He's got as many Super Bowl appearances as Aaron Rodgers. So.
Yeah, so does Rex Grossman.
But you love Minnesota in that division, and you love the over 9.5. I actually do as well. I got them way back when you could still get them at 8.5 too.
Oh wow!
And but I've retaken them on the Firekeepers iCasino and Sportsbook app at over 9.5. I don't know if I love them the same to win the division, but I do. I love their over. I think they're going to be so much better this year.
I do, and it's not even that they were that bad last year. Maybe it's me not liking Aaron Rodgers, and I think he's he's goofy with a lot of things. But this Minnesota team, all right, you got 8.5. That's one heck of a number, Graham. And I still like over 9.5 because if you look at the schedule. Chicago twice, Detroit twice. Now Detroit did give them 2 heck of a games last year. They really battled them and they beat them one game. Let's say because of the offense that Minnesota has, they win those 4 games. They also play Washington, the Jets, and the Giants. So that should be 7, at least 6. And 8 of their 9 losses last season were by 8 points or less. Zimmer's out. Kevin O'Connell is in. Already here reading and listening about how much Cousins loves O'Connell and how much they're getting along because he's an offensive guy. And we know Zimmer was more on the defensive side of the thing. Cousins, listen, can't win the big games. Maybe, maybe not. But in his 3 or 4 years in Minnesota, he's got 30-plus touchdowns per season. I will say Rodgers only has 2 in his last 5 years. Just saying. And this offense, Cook, Thielen, Justin Jefferson, so loaded. I think Minnesota not only goes over 9.5, not only wins the division, but I say they lead the NFC in scoring as well. I love this team.
Holy shit! I think Jalen Naylor's on that team has been impressing, and
Naylor's on that team. He's very impressive, and also, listen, they no more Devontae Adams for Aaron Rodgers. Let's see how that pans out. I don't like this wide receiving core for Green Bay, what they have. They got they signed ex-Packer linebacker Darius Smith, as you guys know. Missed most of the last season, but 2 previous seasons, 26 sacks in 2 seasons. So him going from Green Bay to Minnesota is going to be awesome, especially in week 1 when they go up against each other. And they got Danielle Hunter back, who's very healthy now, who's a great pass rusher too. I think it's a time for a change in the North, like Minnesota to get 11 wins and for them to win the division.
And you like the Bears under 5.5. I think a lot of people think the Bears are going to have a rough year. Under 5.5 is a low number, though, with 17 games. You got to be really sure somebody's going to stink, and that Justin Fields is going to pull them out of that.
Yeah, and that's exactly. I mean, they finished the season last 12 games of the season last year 3-9, and I mentioned it. And the guys busted my chops up against all odds last year when I said Justin Fields, I don't think is going to be a quality quarterback in the NFL because I don't think he can read NFL secondaries. And he only had 2 games last year where he had over 225 yards. Just one game where he had 2 touchdowns. And the Bears wide receiving core, it's poor to say the least. Mooney, Pringle, Sharp, St. Brown. I just don't like this team, and I definitely don't like how the front office is screwing over Roquan Smith. I mean, all this guy's done in 4 years is go for over 100 tackles in every year. He's got 525 career tackles in 4 years. But the Bears front office doesn't want to pay him. They're one of the worst front offices, not just in football, but in all sports. I think that's a downer for the Bears, the players, the fans. And it's, again, I just think it's going to be a terrible season in Chicago. And I think they may not even get to 5, Graham. I think they might get 4.
I'm gonna look. One of our listeners, Dominic's gonna be very upset by this, but I'm gonna play along with you just because I enjoy watching the Bears suffer a little bit. All right,
We've suffered enough with Trubisky.
That's true. That's true. I don't actually hate the Bears.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk.
He got into the playoffs one year, though. He did.
But still, when you could have, when you could have had who, that's not a great vibe. I've been told I will not say the name out loud that it passed on. Any games, week 0, college football. Football is back, as we say here. And is there anything you like in the football slate? Again, these are. It's hard to know what's what, but it's hard to know in week 1 too. Is there anything you like this weekend?
You're right. It is hard, Graham. And I would advise there's no big, tremendous game this weekend. So I would advise that take it easy until next week and see how things play out a little bit maybe this week. But I do. How about this? I've got a 7-point teaser for you. I know you love those teasers.
I do. Yeah.
So how about this one? Let's go. Nebraska down to -6.5. Game is in Ireland against Northwestern. Restructured Scott Frost's contract. He's back. Nebraska did lose. I know they lost 9 games last year, but they lost those 9 games, guys, by an average of 6 points. That's crazy for college football. He's due. Scott Frost is due. Nebraska's due for a change here. Northwestern is down this year. One of Nebraska's wins last year was against the Wildcats. They beat them by 49. So give me Nebraska in Ireland -6.5 with Arkansas +0.5 at home against Cincinnati. Arkansas ranked number 19 in the country. They have the quarterback KG Jefferson back. He had 21 passing touchdowns last year, just 4 picks. Cincinnati they were a tremendous team last year, but they lost a ton of people, ton of players this year to the NFL. Ritter's on Atlanta. Running back Jerome Ford, who was fantastic, had 20 touchdowns last year for Cincinnati. He's in Cleveland, and the best receiver, Alec Pierce, is with the Colts. All those guys made it to the NFL. So give me Arkansas to get it done at home against Cincinnati, a rebuilding Cincinnati team. Just got to win the game. And Nebraska to win by a touchdown over Northwestern in Ireland.
You playing any of these games, Jason?
Well, it's funny that you bring up Nebraska, boys, because I was going to ask you about the over/under for the win total for the season. It's 7.5 for Nebraska. Like Harry said, Scott Frost, 5th year, named Casey Thompson from Texas as the quarterback. I mean, it's 5th year, right? He's got to do something. But over/under wins 7.5. If you look at the schedule, there's some tough games on there. I don't know, fellas. I think I still like the under. With Nebraska on their 7.5.
To me, it feels like bait, though. Like, it's too good. Like, it jumps at you. Like, what makes 7.5? Like, they're going to go...
At Iowa, at Michigan, they play Nebraska, or Wisconsin at Nebraska at home. So they play Oklahoma at home. So it's going to be a tough one.
I'll tell you guys, I kind of like the over in Nebraska. I know it's kind of a big number considering only a few wins last year, but they do have a new offensive coordinator, Mark Whipple from Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh was the number 3 scoring team in the country last year at 42 points a game. So you mentioned Casey Thompson. They also got a wide receiver, Trey Palmer from LSU. After this game against Northwestern, get this game in Ireland, come back, and you got 4 straight home games. I'm going to take Nebraska. Scott Frost gets some luck here. Turns things around a little bit. I think Nebraska, they needed a new change. Martinez is now not the quarterback. He's at Kansas State and with the transfer portal. New vibes, good vibes for Nebraska. I said they get 8.
I kind of like the under in this game. I know it's a low-scoring game, long way to travel. I think Northwestern's defense will be okay. Give me the under 49.5 in this game.
And what is this Harry telling everybody to pump the brakes in week 0? I mean, today, punish the books, my friend. What are you talking about? Wait for next week. Get out of here.
Listen, I can't wait to get the text from Jason how he got screwed in this UNLV. I can't wait.
All right, Harry. I'm going to give you something for this week for the people, for something that's a little more educated, something before the college football games for the large part for people to enjoy. All right, 3-team Premier League parlay. And I apologize to you. I've been off because partly I was in England seeing the games, and yet I wasn't seeing enough games, and so my education on Leeds and Newcastle was
so in person you're ass at gambling in soccer?
Well, I just didn't see other games because I'm at one game is what I'm saying.
Can I ask you a question, Graham, about it?
Yeah.
I was there a couple years ago too for the games and everything like that, and went into their, whatever you want to call it, I think they call them over there, from memory serves me right, their sports parlors in terms of like a sports book?
Yeah.
Did you go in there?
I did.
Make some wagers?
I did. We had and Jesus from Arsenal, we had him on a hat trick, and it paid pretty well. He got 2 goals pretty quick, and then 2 other opportunities. It was fun. We didn't put a lot on it. It paid pretty well. We didn't do a lot of that because, I still had I didn't have access to the Firekeepers or any of the local apps here, but I did have access to my site with my guy, so I still had access to play the games. All right. So what I like this week is a 3-team parlay, home favorites. Manchester City bounced. Crystal Palace has been good, but Manchester City minus 604 against Crystal Palace at home. Right, they're going to win that game. Chelsea minus 269 at home against Leicester City. Leicester City will not defensively give the problems to Chelsea that Leeds did. They just don't attack the same way. Chelsea looked really good for most of that game against Tottenham. They're going to win that game at home. And then I know Fulham's been good, but Arsenal's been better. Arsenal at home minus 346. You do those 3 combined, you're talking even money with 3 games at home teams, which, man, there's a ton in the Premier League. I love it. I'm going to play it big. So that's where I'm at. I'm on Arsenal, I'm on Chelsea, and I'm on Man City this week. And Jason's laughing at me.
Well, I'll tell you, when I gave out that pick a couple weeks ago, Brentford at plus 270 to either tie or win, and they tied 2-2. So the plus 270 was the winner. My buddy, who follows this stuff religiously like you do, Graham, and he's given me 2 underdogs this week. Just wondering, curious what you think, because I'm gonna give him a shot since he gave us a winner last time. He said West Ham can't score for the life of them, but at plus 230 against Villa, he's like, they are way overdue.
Yeah.
They're going to get the offense going this week. So he said West Ham at plus 230 over Villa, who's something special. And then he told me the Wolves are also due at plus 175 at home against Newcastle. Newcastle, we said, has been playing pretty tough lately, but this is kind of a letdown situation because we felt the Wolves know how to play defense. At plus 175 for the Wolves, plus 230 for West Ham. Hey, if you go 1-1, you're a winner.
No, I'm huge on that. I also like to pick them with the Wolves too. Just basically take, if they win, it's a draw no bet, so to speak. So, no, I absolutely love it. Anything you're playing this week, Jason, in the Premier League? No, or anywhere?
I'm trying to figure out this Illinois-Wyoming game because we know our friend Cody Tucker covers Wyoming. It seems that they're kind of the injury bugs hitting them already. But do we trust, fellas? Do we trust Illinois to cover the 11? I just.
There was not, you guys know, being the Big Ten country, but if you guys check out all the games and see how if you want to list top 3 screwiest teams last year to figure out what they're going to do week in, week out, Illinois was definitely on the list.
I like Illinois over the season wins over 4.5. I'm big on that. I don't love them this week with 11. I don't have a feel for Wyoming. Everything I read is sort of they lost a lot, but they were helter-skelter last year. Sometimes they look great, sometimes they struggle. It's very hard to get a read on anything that I trust. And then you get all these people who like to preview every single college football team, which means they know very little about any of them. Like, focus, learn a league, learn a few teams, do the previews that way. That drives me absolutely.
Not everyone is Greg Peterson, who knows every player from every team.
Yeah.
Sounds like Harry's a fan.
the groan there. Harry, you are a beautiful man. I wish you luck this week. Look forward to doing a full slate next week.
Can't wait.
All right, see you.
Feel better.
Thanks.
That is the great Harry Gagnon from Against All Odds, Cousin Sal, Best Bet Corner, and ExtraPoints.com. And that's us picking the game presented by Firekeepers iCasino and Sportsbook app. Let's just stay right here and dig into these.
If anyone ever says your name and someone on the phone goes, that must mean they have an issue. I have to find out what's going on.
Anybody else catch that? I was like, oh yeah, he's a fan. Let's dig into these Groovy Donut Twitter questions and just go right to them.
Eric Schultz up first. What are the odds Montorie Foster has more catches and yards this year than Keon Coleman? Nobody's talking about Foster, but I liked his in-season improvement a year ago.
It's possible, absolutely. I mean, Coleman is. Coleman I'm more fascinated about because I think he probably has a higher ceiling just physically, and they keep. The one thing I do think MSU is careful about, they're promoting the heck out of Keon Coleman on Twitter and through their social media. They don't do that if they don't think a guy is ready for it and ready for a big season. So that I think it's more likely that Coleman has the bigger year, but you're right. Foster was a really good player last year, and I think there's a lot of there are other guys being overlooked.
Dominic up next. Are we only getting a Wednesday show because a bunch of whiny vulvas complained about having two shows close together the other day? As president of the Slouch and the Rude fan club, the people want more material, not less.
No, it's scheduling this week, and we do need the break heading into our normal, like Sundays are where we kind of kick off the season, so to speak, sort of. But yeah, no, we don't love that turnaround. That wasn't people complaining. We didn't love it either. We have scheduling conflicts this week. And including I'm up in Marquette this weekend helping my wife at a wedding shower, tagging along. Yeah,
that sounds fun.
You know what? I'll go to Marquette for that. Like I get to tag along, hang out.
Well, yeah, but then when you get there, you're put to work.
I will be put to work. Although I hear that they ordered more food than is actually people coming.
Well, they knew you were on your way.
Part of my responsibility is to eat the extra food, and I'm really excited about that. So yeah.
Jared up next. What would this year's MSU football team have to do to equate the success and surprise that last year's team accomplished from 2 wins to 10 wins, and this year it would be 10 wins to what?
It's a good question. You know, what would, I mean, because that was a huge jump last year, and everybody knew, I think, or thought they were going to be better than projected. That's why we thought the over 4.5 was a gimme. But nobody saw 10 wins coming. Nobody saw 11 wins. Nobody saw...
Absolutely not. Not even halfway through the season.
8-0 start was... Nobody saw that. And it wasn't just that they won these games. It was how they looked. It was that they were the smarter, more disciplined team late in games. The way they finished off Miami. I mean, I think the stretch with like Miami, Rutgers, that stretch of late September, early October is the best they ever were last year, and it had a lot to do with their health, and they still had Jalen Naylor and Kevin Walker at full strength, and the defensive secondary hadn't been completely beaten up at that point and picked apart. So they were. So the question now is, what would make people feel the way they felt about last year's team about this year's team? And to me, it really begins with the Ohio State game. And obviously, they would have to be undefeated going into the Ohio State game. It's not even about beating Ohio State. It's about looking like you belong on the field with Ohio State. If they lose 37-25 to Ohio State in a game that's a game in the fourth quarter, and then go on and have a year where they win 10 games again, even so, and then they obviously beat Michigan. If they beat Michigan and compete with Ohio State, and they're back in the New Year's Six Bowl, that vibe of they will feel so much closer, and I think that's it. That the people will leave the season with their chest out a little bit. You got to beat Michigan I'm talking about to have that feeling, and then you have to show you really belonged on the field with Ohio State. And I think that would really and get back to double-digit wins. I think that would do it. I think the Ohio State thing was it just took the energy out of the season a little bit.
Well, yeah, when a team could have scored 100 points. Yeah. They called the dogs off, kind of. That's not a good feeling.
But I also think part of the reason that happened, a lot of reason that happened, wasn't just that the defense at that point had lost all confidence and had lost a lot of healthy bodies, but there was no counter on offense. Like if they had played Ohio State, even with that defense, a month earlier, when Jalen Naylor was healthy, when Kenneth Walker was healthy, remember he wasn't even healthy in that game, and they had that full offense, and they were able to put drives together and put points on the board and keep their defense off the field some, they would have raised some eyebrows about what they were doing offensively. It would have been a very different game. It might have been 38 to 17, and it would have felt just not like this annihilation, and that would have had a whole different vibe. And so that's really where it begins for me.
Mojo Jojo. Looking at historical data for when Michigan and MSU were number one, Michigan has 34 number one rankings versus MSU's 29, and didn't overtake them until the 90s, and MSU was the better program in the 50s and 60s. How did we lose that momentum? Lots of brand equity lost over decades till D'Antonio and Tucker.
Well, a couple things. One, I mean, the 70s, 80s, and 90s are when college football really came of age, right? That's when television was much more prevalent. You could just see more teams. It became a bigger deal. Like, if you look at the programs that dominated those eras, and Nebraska being one, and Michigan, and those, like, it created brands that are historically looked at today a certain way, whereas if you did it in the 50s and 60s, it's not looked at the same way. It's not just time gone by. It's teams were traveling by train. They didn't see, you didn't see all that many people. So I think, what happened for Michigan State was Duffy Daugherty's era petered out. They didn't make great decisions after that. They probably let him go too long. And the other programs also, for a long time, Michigan State had a huge advantage by being on the front end of integration. And that changed when other schools started to accept black players. So that advantage that they had for a while was lost.
Maybe media next. Listening to Jason read out the 1-800-GAMBLER ad got me to thinking about what it would take for Jay to call them. Jason, if 1-800-GAMBLER would pay your debt, say under $50K, but then the catch was you couldn't gamble for a year, would you call them or accept a kneecapless life? Well, I mean, under $50K to not gamble for a year, there's a reason why I owe that much money, and I'm pretty sure if I got to that point doing $50 to $25 parlays on baseball, then I think, I would take that deal in a heartbeat. Now, if you said for life, we talk, but
I think there is a point in everybody's gambling life where they lose a little bit and they go, oh boy, maybe I should just stop. I don't know. You've been there? You've been there.
Well, for how long?
Right. Well, it ends if you like gambling. But I also think there's absolutely a dollar figure where I would give it up forever if the amount of money I got in the hole that much, or if somebody just said, like if somebody said to me tomorrow, I'll just give you $50K, but you can never bet again. I think I would never bet again. I would take
but that would take sports out for me. So, like seriously, like thanks to gambling, like I watch a lot more sports. Like I'm not talking about hundreds of dollars anymore, but even like $25 parlay to get going on baseball for a night is exciting to me. And yes, $50K, obviously you have to think about it, but to never gamble again, it would take like my soul away a little bit. So I just feel like I'm in a good spot now where I'm not gambling excessively like I used to. Now that I'm not drinking anymore, so I really have never got to any like high stakes stuff where I've lost money like I used to. So, I mean, it's different for everyone, I guess.
By the way, if you are thinking about your Michigan State football tailgate, or you're thinking about do something for your kid who's gone back to school, or do something for your teacher, Groovy Donuts is here for you. Go to groovydonuts.com to place your orders today, or swing by the location on Lake Lansing Road, East Lansing, or in Williamson. They're open 7 to 1. Thursday through Sunday, so you can go, pick up donuts for your teacher before you went there on Thursday or Friday. And they also have peanut butter and jellies and apples for teachers' donuts this week. And it looks like an amazing donut. Just they don't. Groovy Donuts does not make donuts that aren't amazing donuts. And but so instead of bringing your teacher an apple, bring them a Groovy Donut, this PB&J donut. Enjoy a light, fluffy donut filled with raspberry jam and topped with peanut butter icing and chopped peanuts. The teacher's apples, the light, fluffy yeast donut decorated to resemble a bright red apple. Option to add chopped apple filling, which of course I would make that option. Available through available August 25th, starting this week, Thursday through Sunday, September 4th. So pre-order those. Pre-order those, groovydonuts.com.
I like apple filling. Jeff Oswald next. I enjoyed Draymond's latest speech, but do you think some NBA players get tired of hearing it?
If you haven't heard it, we've got it here. Now, the original speech still had the swearing in it. I think they've gone back and taken it out, but
Graham said it to me, and I was recording it for the show. He's like, where did the swear words go? You were like so offended.
It's a better speech for the MFers, but he's talking directly to Gabe Brown at one point. He's working out with a bunch of NBA players, including some Raptors, and this is Draymond Green's speech. It's really good.
I started talking to you. You started getting the ball. You want to take jump shots and never crash the offensive board. You're not going to make it shooting jump shots. You're going to make it by hustling and getting offensive rebounds. Getting stops. You know what I'm saying? Gabe, I just beat you in all of these sports. That's bullshit. And it's my first time on the court. Up and down. That's bullshit. You trying to make a team. How you gonna make it? If Pascal Siakam is out running, if Fred VanVleet is out running, you will never. You know what I'm saying? So we can talk IQ all we want, but at the end of the day, motherfuckers gotta play a role in the NBA. It's too much of a team that can do what they want to do, and 13 other motherfuckers they gotta play a role that can do what they want to do. Everybody else got a role, so you're gonna either master your role or you're gonna get the fuck out. And it's just that simple. And running hard, 2-minute sprint, really? Motherfuckers on the job? That's bullshit. You don't work hard. And don't tell me, oh, it's just the end. Because that's the end of the playoffs. Ask them how hard it is to win a championship. The end. Why motherfuckers lose? Because they can't get to the end. You can't get to the end. So I watched y'all do this 2-minute sprint, and maybe 10 people took it serious. There's 40 in here. Maybe 10 people took it serious. Why? Because you think you're done? Well, you won't make it to the end. That's hard as fuck. And when you finish, you're exhausted. And everybody sitting here, nobody's exhausted. You don't push your fucking self. It's like 35 motherfuckers do this. The lounge right there, they stop. You don't want it. You gotta want this shit, man. We can talk IQ, we can talk all of this shit. But at the end of the day, the motherfucker who wanted more is gonna get it. Which I promise you, I'm gonna want it more. Ain't nobody gonna want it more than me. I may not be the best ball handler, shooter, but ain't nobody gonna fucking want it more than me. And that's a skill. That's a skill that, by the way, anyone can possess. Anyone can have that.
I just like Fred VanVleet sitting back there. He's like, you're going to get beat by Fred VanVleet? You're not going to make it in this league. Wait a minute.
To me it was...
But how does that not resonate with guys? Anyone listening to that, he's won championships. Why would you not listen to Draymond Green?
Totally.
Right?
And if you're Gabe Brown, there's a...
He knows that.
Yeah, right.
It's not the first time Gabe Brown's probably heard something like that.
No, it's
I love Draymond.
And I think young players, and Draymond is a guy who's a second-round pick who has made it through a lot of that, having those traits. And I love when guys talk about hard work and effort and want to being a talent and being a skill, because it is. And there are guys who are in the league because of it. I mean, you got to have the other goods, and Draymond will tell you that his ability to rebound and things like that made it a big
But guys that are drafted in the second round, that probably resonates more. But if you're drafted in the top 5, do you think that way Draymond does? Because he got that mentality from going through the things he had to go through, like you mentioned, right? Like he had to earn everything he got to where he's at. So I don't know. I listen. Kevin from Rochester Hills up next. How concerned is Tuck with the kicking game after bringing in a grad transfer this late training camp?
Yeah, you don't do it unless you're a little concerned, right? You got a scholarship kicker. I think there's, and some of it's, I think, understanding that your team is not in a position yet where you have a margin to mess around with that, and not wanting a kicker to potentially be what screws up the season.
But how bad is the current kicking situation before this transfer?
But we don't know that. But I also think I don't think he knows yet how these guys will handle pressure, and maybe he doesn't trust that. They try to do that sort of stuff in practice. They try to simulate it, and there may be some things he's seen where he goes, I don't know if I can trust these guys yet. And what you don't want is you're trying to build momentum in a program, is you're trying to recruit at a level your program hasn't recruited at ever. And you're getting these kids, and people feel the buzz. What you don't want is a year where 4 late missed field goals send you to 6-6.
But the kicker is pretty cut and dry, though. If the kicker in practice is missing 5 field goals straight or something, I think that's time to panic. And he was hitting all of them, but like one, I think that you would hold off on the transfer, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, the transfer has years left and eligibility too, so that's interesting as well.
That's what I've heard. Ryan Schultz up next. It seemed last year that Harold Joyner got the most snaps in obvious passing situations. Do you think Collins will take that job this year? And do you see anyone other than Berger or Broussard fighting their way into the top 2 in carries this season?
It is hard for me not to root for Elijah Collins because he stuck it out, because has been such a good teammate.
Because you wrote a column.
No, I mean, you do that last year talking to people. And I talked to him a little bit last year, but just talking to other people about how he interacted and how his attitude about things. And the fact that here's a guy who had a taste of it at a pretty high level. He was 12 yards from 1,000 yards as a redshirt freshman. And then to have COVID, to have the injuries, and so there's still a chance that he's a pretty good running back. And so you hope for him that he gets to show that. And if not at MSU, eventually somewhere else. But you hope for him it happens at MSU. And I think having Kenneth Walker last year helped. Like, Kenneth Walker was so damn good. If you were another running back, you're not going to sit there and go, well, why aren't they playing me? Like it's like, well, that dude's pretty. This year I think these guys all feel like they've got a little more of a shot at a bigger role. And Joyner, I don't know. I've not seen anything from Joyner yet that really says to me that guy's going to cause defenses problems. Doesn't mean he won't. Young guy, was a heralded recruit, 4-star kid. But I think Berger has. When you listen to the coaches, it's very clear that Berger is one of the top two. He is the top guy right now. Broussard's a guy they thought coming in would also do that. You haven't heard the same. You've heard sort of working himself back into it. And so I do think there's perhaps an opportunity. And the thing about it, the thing I love about sports and football, and we talk about this at the quarterback position, coaches don't make the decisions. It's about the talent and the guy. I mean, if the best of Elijah Collins is a redshirt freshman and now with a little more, strength or whatever in the weight room shows up, that's a guy who can earn some minutes on the field, can get his way on the field or something. I do think I'm very curious to watch how that all plays out.
Dylan Owens up next. Who will lead MSU's team in sacks and how many will they have?
Yeah, I don't know that they have a defensive end that it's going to be. It's going to be, I'll give you a sort of a crazy off-the-ball long shot guy. And not like Brulé or a blitzing linebacker. Give me Darius Snow, who's going to be playing linebacker, coming in different situations. I think they'll use him in a lot of ways. I think he's I don't know. I could be way off base, but I think he's a guy who, I don't think they have a guy yet, or at least we haven't seen it. And it will be interesting with Brandon Jordan, and Mel Tucker talked about this week. You are what you emphasize, and they have emphasized the pass rush with him. So we're going to see if there is some progress. But it's not like the roster really turned over and all of a sudden they got a number of 5-star defensive ends or anything. They still got, it's still a roster that I don't know that has that guy.
Gavin Haas next. Does MSU have a chance to win the Big Ten East this season? I mean, what do you consider a chance?
Yeah, I would say no. I don't think anybody but Ohio State really does. But because it ultimately, I mean, if you only lose to Ohio State, and you're going to have to beat Ohio State, because Ohio State, you're going to be lucky if they drop a game, I think. And then you're probably not going to have the tiebreaker. Unless it's, I don't. But again, we've been wrong about stuff before with Ohio State. We thought they were a sure thing. My sense is MSU is not there yet as a program. Like, I don't. The idea that they would be consistent enough to beat Washington, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan, Penn State, and only lose to Ohio State, and then have the math work in their favor, or beat Ohio State and then win enough of those other games. I just don't. If I'm wrong, I'm not going to do the show naked or anything, but I'm not going to Chad Latz this, but I will. I will be surprised.
Ron Quixote up next. Who wins the Big Ten West? Seems like about 5 teams: Wisconsin, Minnesota, Purdue, Iowa, Nebraska, who could all go 10-2 or 6-6.
Yeah. You talk to the Iowa guys, they'll say Iowa feels like an Iowa year.
It always feels like an Iowa year.
Yeah, I know.
Big Ten West, Wisconsin, Iowa, but Purdue, Minnesota, that's the question, right? We talked about Nebraska. Do you trust Scott Frost? Under 7.5 for Nebraska this year. I still like the under until they prove me otherwise, I guess.
And I don't hate Purdue as a long shot pick on that side either. They got maybe the best quarterback, or one of the best couple quarterbacks in the Big Ten. You got a coach that I think knows how to compete and put a game plan together to give them a chance in big games. But it does seem like it's a usual year in the West, I would say.
So Purdue would be kind of your sleeper bet.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's value, like long shot odds in the Firekeepers iCasino Sportsbook app. I think Purdue is a good play in terms of just where the odds are.
Someone wrote me last night saying how impressed they are by your live reader segues. You're getting really good at that, by the way. That's what someone said. Al, up next. Who will be the surprise team in the Big Ten this year? So Purdue, then?
Probably Purdue.
That's it? Okay. Cucker Carlson. What are the chances that you two could get the star of Hard Knocks, the Buff Lebowski, on the podcast by the end of the season, assuming you really put all of your all into getting him on?
We couldn't get Dan Campbell on this podcast. We just don't have the connections. Like,
And he goes on 97.1, doesn't he?
Yeah.
For us. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, MSU guys we can get, college guys we got a shot to some degree, but we just don't have. You got to have.
I got to say, out of all of them, though, I would like Dan Campbell on because I think you could get more. I mean, between him and Izzo, I think they're because coaches' interviews generally are kind of boring, but I think Dan Campbell would give you the real stuff like Izzo does.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think Campbell would be an outstanding interview, and it would be amazing to. It'd be amazing. To
get like, why does he say man all the time? I was like, I don't know. When you have a shortened vocabulary, like I understand his pain. Like you have to throw man in there. Like, it's like bro, kind of. Chris Eastlick up next. Has there been a more likable Lions coach than Dan Campbell? Obviously, you want all Lions coaches to succeed, but Campbell feels like the guy that you really are rooting for. Maybe Hard Knocks helps, but the guy seems so genuine, I can't help but root for him. And yes, Dan Campbell is a nice guy, probably friends with Shep. Well, let's see, if he throws another 3-win season together, I think Dan Campbell will just be considered a nice guy.
Wayne Fontes is pretty likable, right?
Yeah.
I mean, everybody, the players love Wayne Fontes. Every time William Ford was like, hey, we're going to fire this guy, you don't make the playoffs, they win 7 straight. Like, fuck that, we're not doing win sprints. We want Wayne.
Right, but you barely saw Wayne Fontes, and when you did, you saw him with a cigar, you loved him, and big game Wayne and all that stuff. But Dan Campbell, like, you see everything with Hard Knocks now, so.
You know the guy who, who's the guy who was the defensive line coach? Who's the coach in 0-16? It was, who's the coach in 0-16?
Who is it?
He's going to make me do this.
Marty
No, that was not it.
I know. You want some Hoff?
Yeah, give me some
Let's get
Hoff.
some Hoff, sorry.
Rob Marinelli, okay. What I loved about Rob Marinelli is at the end of the year when they fired him and somebody asked about, because he only got 1 year, right? And it wasn't a very good team.
That's all we needed.
Yeah, but it wasn't a very good team either. But he just said, yeah, you can't go 0-16 and keep your job in this league. Like, he totally understood it. I always respected that about Rob. Like, there was no, like, wait a second, I didn't get a fair shake. No, you can't be the first 0-16 team.
Did he get a fair shake? Technically?
I mean, it was a shit team.
Yeah, that was bad. Mr. Neurotic Pants. Jason, you alluded to Lansing area media rivalries and DJ conflicts in the past. Which beef was the most interesting? Which was the most ridiculous?
All right, let's take a quick break. When we get back, we'll get into this with the Rube.
It's not long.
There's
coming after the break. Coming up.
We're right back. Couch in the Rube, presented by Skyman Premium Cannabis and Firekeepers iCasino and Sportsbook app.
Where else can you cheer on your team? Enjoy a mouth-watering burger or savor sushi? It's about handcrafted cocktails or 146 beers on tap. Take your game day or take night to Cask Company Kitchen Bar or Front 43 Neighborhood Pub near Frandor. 2 amazing places with 1 awesome blended modern American Asian menu. Catch the game on one of 30 60-inch TVs or stop in for the all-you-can-eat lunch buffet. Enjoy happy hour or elevate your night out at Cask Company or Front 43 on East Saginaw in Lansing. Wherever you are on your cannabis journey, let Skyman Premium Cannabis be your guide, your friend, and your place. Whether you're curious about cannabis or a seasoned connoisseur, Skyman's knowledgeable staff will help you with a vast selection of products to choose from that fit your needs. Skyman believes access to the best cannabis helps people do good and feel good, so they grow it right here in Michigan, giving you high-quality, locally grown cannabis at highly accessible prices. Visit Skyman.com for special offers and location information throughout Michigan, and use the promo code CouchAndRoot20 for 20% off your first visit. Skyman Cannabis, you'll love this place. Come enjoy irresistible, award-winning, handcrafted donuts and locally roasted coffee at Groovy Donuts. Surprise your family and coworkers with special holiday designs and flavors, or put the perfect finishing touch on an event with a custom order. Birthdays, weddings, gender reveals, our friends at Groovy Donuts are your answer. Experience the Groovy Donuts difference for yourself on Lake Lansing Road in East Lansing or in Wilmington. Get more information or place an order at groovydonuts.com.
Hey, somebody said sounds like we're talking to a Dixie cup.
If you're looking for relaxed vibe, great food, and great selection, anytime Lansing is your place. Enjoy the
It sounds what? Like it's in
Talking to a Dixie cup.
on Spreaker?
Yeah, well, I don't know what they're listening to.
Also offers 40 plus beers on tap, including ciders and seasonal offers.
Can you ask them what? Yeah, ask them what they're listening to.
The spacious and
On Facebook, it sounded a little weird when I went to it, but it sounded like
Really?
with a friend, a word lunch,
It sounded like it was almost like behind, like you could hear.
you'd rather eat at home.
I don't know. You could hear the studio. I don't know.
Does it sound weird in your headphones? I've,
Right.
right. All right.
I will just finish it. We'll figure it out.
All right.
Downtown Lansing for the Midtown Brewing Company experience. Beavers Online Casino and Sportsbook is the site to play. Get your Vegas on right now from your phone, tablet, or laptop. All the hottest slots and tables, plus sports betting featuring in-game wagering. Go with the name you know, Firekeepers. Get your first casino deposit and sports wager matched up to $500 each. Visit firekeeperscasino.com to download the mobile app today. Terms and conditions apply. Must be 21 or older and located in Michigan. Gambling problem? Call the Michigan Problem Gambling Helpline at 1-800-270-7117.
Find our live stream, podcast archives, as well as show, affiliate, and sponsorship information at our website, spotlightmediastudios.com.
Couch and Roo, presented by Skyman Premium Cannabis, inspiring people to be their best, feel their best. And also our Wednesday night show brought to you by our friends at Firekeepers iCasino and Sportsbook app, digging into your groovy donut Twitter questions.
Yeah, he was talking about the neurotic
Oh,
bands,
yes.
about the Lansing media rivalry. I wasn't really alluding. It was just, it's a bit that has happened through radio throughout the years. I guess one I can't really talk about, but the other one, you know, Mad Dog, huge show. When Huge came into town in around 2002, they got those guys would get into it because they were on different times. I don't know, it's always like Jack and Tom with Stout. Like Stout would never even pay attention to any of that shit, but the guys just generally, they didn't like each other because you're, you know, trying to take money from each other pretty much. So
Yeah, Jack would do little digs at Stout. You see,
like we do, it's busted balls. We do it with Jack as well. It's all. I mean, they can do it with us. It's all. We're all free game.
We're good with it. The one that was, you know, I remember when Jack came in to do his show and he had like an exclusivity deal with all of us. And so we didn't do like the Huge show for a while. He had like 5 different writers on, and Bill Simons was not happy about that. But that wasn't our fault. It was like
The Huge show.
we were, you know, I mean,
That's pretty weird though. You had to sign a contract.
it was, well, Jack was paying us. Nobody else paid us, and Jack. Our whole point was, if you pay us, we'll do shit. Like, we're gonna,
Believe me, I know. It was trying. It was hard getting 4 guests on for another show a day. You guys are doing it for free. I was like, all right. Yeah. So other than that, it really nothing crazy. Molon Lobby Spartan. Why would American sports fans care about the ethics of the Live Golf Tour? Nobody bats an eye when the NBA does billions of dollars of business, yet has millions of Uyghur people in camps doing forced labor. Sure, cut the Saudis off, cut the Chinese off, that as well.
there's no doubt there's hypocrisy all that. I mean, the Saudis are pretty egregious human rights. The Chinese are too.
The phone you're holding.
Yeah, and
Type out stuff on Twitter that you're.
I'll say this about what's happening with the PGA Tour right now. It's kind of exciting.
What is happening? All I saw was a video of Tiger where they're going to draft 3 teams or something.
Oh, no, that's something totally separate. What I'm talking about is the elevated tour events, the commitment from the players to play in at least like 15 or 20 events, or at least 20 events a year.
You know what? And I applaud the Live Tour for doing at least that, for getting the PGA to wake up a little bit.
Yes. Now, again, I mean, some of the Saudi stuff is egregious. It's just egregious. And you're right. They're Chinese, and the NBA with China, and there's no doubt there's hypocrisy all around.
Jeff Peterson. Up next. So, how exactly does the multi-billion-dollar deal impact the Big Ten network, or doesn't it? Planning for my watching future.
it shouldn't have affected a ton. You know, when you start to have games on Peacock, you know, games, you know, maybe there's a little less inventory, but the Big Ten Network the Big Ten is never going to screw over the Big Ten Network. That's going to be a thing. And maybe there's other sport inventory that's a little more. The thing that's been fascinating for the Big Ten, they've discovered on BTN, is how much volleyball does really well. In certain sports, like, their plan initially was that hockey on Friday nights. You see a lot more volleyball now. People watch volleyball more than they do Big Ten hockey. It's been a problem for Big Ten hockey, frankly. I don't even know.
Men's volleyball?
Women's volleyball.
No.
I don't even know if the Big Ten would have done hockey if they had realized that it wasn't necessary, really. Like, originally, it was like, oh, this is more inventory for the Big Ten Network. This is, you know, we'll have Friday night games, we'll control the week, you know. They hardly do any of that stuff now. I don't know if you went back today and said, let's, you know, do you want to start a hockey conference? The Big Ten would do it.
Professor, up next. Which is your favorite show of the week to do?
I like them for different reasons. Like a Sunday night show after an eventful weekend is fun.
When I have hot takes, yes.
When you have good hot takes, right? Because there's energy to it, and you can feel it in your hot takes. Not yours. I'm talking about the listener hot takes. I mean, I can feel it in yours too. But and it's a fun thing to do. The middle of the week show, we have good guests and Harry, and it's
they're all good when we're flowing and in the mood and all that stuff.
And I love the Twitter question show. The group we do on Twitter question show, because it's our most chill show of the week. It's like you guys pretty much produce it, and it leads to great discussion. So for different reasons, I like them all. But certainly in the summertime, you know, it's when it's the hot take one is not my favorite.
Professor or Andrew Gauthier, is there a habit you have on social media that you are often regretful of? If so, why? And are you taking perverse pleasure in Mel Tucker's latest comments on committed recruits?
I'll let Andrew put the second one in here to sponsor the segment as a way of sneaking it in.
That's how you do it.
I am taking perverse pleasure, by the way. And I enjoyed the heck out of Mel Tucker saying, basically saying it was a super interested is the new word for a commitment, and that's basically what it is. It's all it is. And nobody should say committed, it's super interested. And that's the way coaches see it. Now, to the question, is there a habit on social media that you are often regretful of? And if so, what is it and why?
A habit?
Or what's something you regretted on social media? Anything you regret?
Oh, God, when I was drinking, I mean, there was a lot of different things, but yeah, it started off as a bit, and I started doing it where I was just texting people's numbers I had who were legends in my phone, telling them that I appreciated them. I wish I could walk that back, but yeah.
Oh, you did that while we were doing the show.
I did it with Blaha during the show, and then I did it with Izzo, and then he actually responded, and then I posted it on Twitter. I wish I didn't do that. I don't know. It wasn't that big of a deal, I don't think, in hindsight, but yeah. I'm glad I'm over that stuff. I just try to entertain. I don't know.
That's fantastic. No, I have had many tweets I regret, many social media posts. Like, I regret, you know how you, on Facebook, your Facebook, it's not timeline, your memories, Facebook memories.
Yeah.
They come back at you from like 10, 12 years ago now. And I used Facebook like Twitter in like 2010.
Song lyrics.
I wasn't entertaining. I wasn't funny. I thought I had opinions that needed to be heard. It was the worst. Like
I see it, and my balls instantly hurt when I see the memories. Like, you have memories from 12 years. I'm like, no, don't do it. You're going to ruin your day.
I'm so glad nobody can see them but me, and I just let them go on by. It's absolutely awful. And some of the stuff, it's like, I thought this was genuinely funny. I mean,
well, yeah.
It wasn't.
No.
And I wasn't that, I wasn't that worse of a storyteller. I just back then, you know me. Come on.
I'm just kidding. You know what? MySpace would have been worse. Because I was like younger, mid-20s. Like, I guarantee you 10 times worse.
Now, most of my regrets and my habit is I see a tweet that I feel I should respond to, and I don't need to respond because all it does is take me into a fight that I don't need to be in, or a
Why do you feel like you
conversation.
need to jump in, though?
Because I feel like they're wrong, they need to be told they're wrong, and I'm just stupid. And I'm getting better at that. I'm getting better at going, you know what the next hour of your life is if you respond? Like, stop, just don't do it. And that's my habit. My habit is not, it's not that don't believe what I tweet. It's that it's unnecessary to join the conversation. I'm getting better.
And my instant reaction, I was doing that way back in the day with Twitter too, of not reading articles and just responding in a way. Craig Robinson, for both of you, outside of MSU and Detroit sports, you get to cover any sport or market of your choice. What or where would it be?
Boy. Marquette, Northern Michigan, Division II basketball, something. No, if it was like, any sport, what would it be for you?
I would be like Brendan Quinn's gig, like with the golf.
Yeah.
Like I would love to cover golf because it's going to be in nice weather wherever you go, and golf is just it's a fun sport. There's a lot of storylines and stuff. And
yeah, I would love to work for like Tennis Magazine, just going around like all these tournaments, and you're like sitting in beautiful, sitting at Wimbledon, sitting at the U.S. Open, covering matches, writing features. I could go to the Italian Open before the French. Yeah, I could do that.
Do they still have Tennis Magazine?
I don't know. That's a good question. I used to get it. I remember when Todd Martin was on the cover, I had it in a frame. I was like 12 when I was a dork.
Smart 18770. Now that I have COVID, recommend some TV series for me to binge. Nothing that will make me want to ride horseback on a beach trip.
Well, Only Murders in the Building is one I've given out. I don't know if you love it, but other people do. It is, it's fantastic. And it's on Hulu, and 2 seasons are complete, so you can binge without, having to wait. Which I think that's also important. There's nothing more than like one season. Ted Lasso, if you haven't seen it, I think it's fantastic. Succession is great. Very different show.
Eastbound and Down.
Yeah.
Watch that.
The thing about Succession and Ted Lasso that are great is they're so different. Ted Lasso is like, he's like the best dude in the world, and Succession are like the worst people in the world. And yet you find yourself rooting for both of them the same way, and that tells you how well Succession is actually written, that you're rooting for different people at different times, even though they're all the worst people in the world. If you've never seen The Wire, go back and do it. And if you're looking for a long, my favorite sitcom of all time in binge that I enjoyed with my wife was going through like all 7 seasons of New Girl, which was fantastic. Have you ever seen New Girl?
A couple episodes, yeah.
Fantastic. One of the best shows of all time.
No.
Yeah.
See, that's where you lose people.
No, I
New
think
Girl is not one of the best shows of all time.
Best,
I can understand
comedies, best sitcoms of all time. Yes.
Oh, Jesus. Because of all time. Because Cheers, Roseanne.
Yeah, post laugh track. Oh, it's fantastic.
This is where you lose people.
I don't.
It's insanity. Eric Larson. Your greatest strength is always your greatest weakness. What is yours? Mine is passion and new projects, which brings lots of opportunities, but also overextends me.
I have a little.
You stole my answer.
Yeah. Yes. I have a little. I mean, I like to. I've gotten better at sort of time. I used to always win the meeting. I could be really engaging in a meeting with bosses. Like, this is what I'm going to do, and you get out there and you're like, fuck! I just loaded myself up with stuff that I didn't even need to do that. But I enjoyed winning the meeting and winning the moment so much, and that you're screwed. That's one of my.
When you won the meeting, did you ever walk out and clench your fist? Yes.
Usually I walk out immediately.
I won that meeting.
Usually I walk out.
Couch on Fire next. 4-star recruits committing and decommitting. Should we all just take a chill pill until signing day, especially this year? By the way, I believe ESPN will update their basketball recruit evaluations August 29th.
It'll be about time that finally happens. Yeah, and I do think, and this is where having the season helps. People will be distracted by the actual season. It'll take precedent over recruiting, and that makes life better, I think. And I think one of the things that will also help is you will see Michigan State probably flip a couple of guys. And so lose a couple, gain a couple. Just don't get too attached to them when they are super interested until they actually sign.
Call me Al next. How do you rank James Franklin, Scott Frost, and Brett Bielema on the douche index? It seems to be a really tight race.
So
Franklin's number one.
No, I don't know. I've heard stories about Frost that
Well, yeah, he's a football bro. I mean, Scott Frost is an unbelievable football player. I mean,
I'm talking about as a coach, douche, as an assistant at Oregon.
Bielema looks like a fun dude to hang with.
I actually don't know that Bielema's a douche. I don't know the man at all. He might be fun. He might be kind. I don't know, and I don't frankly know any of them personally. I don't know that. I can't say that James Franklin comes across genuine. Scott Frost, though, I think, is I would go Frost, Franklin, and Beeline.
Now, what did you hear? Is it like one of those things where you look past a reporter and someone in a reporter, you guys were 69, and he said Scott Frost was a jerk? Is it that level? Because, I mean...
Yeah, I don't even want to get into it because it would be accusing somebody of something that's not toward.
No. Sports Guy 1919. When was the last time the Lions, Michigan, and MSU all had some hope going into the season? And why do people complain about the Week 0 game slate? Do people just like to complain? I take any football I can get at this point.
Yeah, it's a nice taste. It's what it is. It's, I'm all for.
I was just complaining about Week 0.
Yeah, it's not a great game slate, but it's not supposed to be.
It should be, because the first week should be a slate like this, because we're just dying for any kind of correct doing baseball parlay after baseball parlay.
And if it was a better slate, they'd call it Week 1. You can't have.
I tell you what.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
And the Lions, Michigan, and MSU all had hope. Like, to this degree, it's probably happened quite a few times, because there have been a lot of seasons before Jason was dead inside where there was some hope for the Lions.
Sure.
And so I would put
2011, 2013.
And Michigan State had a rolling for a minute, even when Michigan, there was some seasons where Michigan had high hope early. So there have been years like this, because it's not like, this isn't like the Lions have Super Bowl aspirations this year. I think if people thought the Lions were a playoff team, and Michigan State and Michigan State were both teams that were, in the conversation a little bit and towards having great years, that would be something maybe we haven't dealt with a ton.
By the way, Harry just texted me. I'm still messed up from COVID. Swore that Cincy, Arkansas was this week. It's next week.
I didn't want to tell him.
Okay.
Yeah, I was looking at it. I was like,
I just want to let people know that Harry did.
Yeah.
The Glute Weasel. How much would it cost for you to post a pic of the family jewels on Twitter?
What's your number?
Enough to buy Twitter.
Yeah, to me, it's like
$43 billion.
It's a retirement thing, and it's probably a retirement with divorce. So
nobody wants to see it.
1.8 million.
I mean, I'd fire a mule pic. I mean,
it's 1.8 million.
Yeah,
because I'm done at the Journal. Probably done doing this show. My wife's leaving.
What a way to end it.
And I don't even know if that's worth it, because like I gotta start over.
Get like more than half.
Yeah, I've got to start over, and who the fuck's gonna marry me again? Like I don't know.
It's not like Tommy Lee getting drunk and showing his mule. It's like us just. It's gonna be sad. We're gonna get goofed on. And
not good. That would be more fun. It'd be. She's taking half, and I don't want to just live. I want to live well. We're talking 10 million. 10 million would do it.
For a pick of your mule.
Yeah.
Jesus. Tyrone Couch. What are the chances of A, MSU football goes undefeated? B, Ohio State loses 2 games. C, Izzo retires. D, the show is still happening in 5 years. E, my wife forgets she is stressed and tired tonight. F, people learn to drive. G, Tucker leaves for a blue blood. H, E again, if not favorable.
That's his wife. Forgets she's stressed tired. MSU football goes undefeated. I would say less than 5%. Ohio State loses 2 straight games. I would say less than 5%. Izzo retires, given what just happened. I would say less than 5%. Show's happening in 5 years. I would say the odds less than 5%. Although we're 40 years old just about. My wife, I don't know your wife. People learn to drive. Less than 5%. Tucker leaves for a blue blood. I think given the money and given what he's building right now, I would be very surprised. I would say in the next year, less than 10%.
Now, the show happened in 5 years. I'm saying like he's probably saying in another 5 years.
Right. In another 5 years, yeah.
Wow. Hans Jurgen, if MSU goes 3-9 and leads the Big Ten in turnovers and penalties, would it be time to reevaluate everything?
Yes. And 3-9 always is, but it's the turnovers and penalties, the lack of, like one of the things that made the beginning of the Mel Tucker era so impressive was that they looked disciplined. And they won games late, good decisions and all. I mean, now, there are circumstances. Peyton Thorne goes down week 1. Jaden Reed goes down 2. There's just a rash of injuries. The line can't hold up. You lose a couple hard luck games. But
Peyton Thorne can't come in and just act like he doesn't want to play football. It has to be an injury-related injury.
Yeah, but you reevaluate some things for sure, absolutely.
Jake Hawkins. What is the best mobile gambling app? Oh, I wonder. I'm tempted to pick one and start gambling on football games, but I'm having a hard time trying to pick one and finding a desire to. Also, what's the fall show schedule going to look like?
Sunday, Tuesday, Thursday is the plan. There might be an occasional Wednesday and some Tuesday if schedule permits it, but you can count on a Sunday and Thursday, we think, and ideally Tuesday is sort of so there's a day in between. And of course, the Firekeepers iCasino and Sportsbook app. Jake, download it, play the games with us. You don't need to pick anything. It's right there. It's right there.
Jake, you didn't bet on football last year?
Surprise.
Man, good for you, I guess. Upper Jerk Guy to round us out here. What is the best bet to make for the upcoming college football season that is most likely to make me money?
Boy, the over-under I like the most. I like Illinois over 4.5 quite a bit. I'm trying to think of them. So we don't have advanced lines out there that are, and maybe some places have them.
What do you mean quite a bit, though? A lot to where you put a decent chunk on Illinois plus the over?
Yeah.
I
don't know yet. And you know, that's the thing. I don't want to give you bad advice here. Because,
well, get ready for it, because we got a whole season.
After week 1, I'll give you 11 weeks of bad advice. But going into there, I'm going to remain slightly humble on the game pick. Stick to the Premier League, which hasn't gone well either to this point. We appreciate you and all of your Groovy Donut Twitter questions. We appreciate Groovy Donuts. Go to groovydonuts.com today. Place your order. Plan on Groovy Donuts for your tailgate, for your kid coming home from the first day of school, for your new teacher. Trust me, Groovy Donuts is better than Apple. Groovy Donuts. And thanks to Firekeepers iCasino and Sportsbook and Firekeepers and Daisy Sportsbook down at Firekeepers. Great place to just stop in, watch games, bet them in person, do the in-person sportsbook experience as well. And, of course, we appreciate Skyman. Go to Skyman.com for location information and specials throughout the state. Your first-time customer, couch and room 20 for 20% off. We'll be back Sunday night. Good show, man.
Yeah, man.
Cut through.